Welcome to the 11th episode of my series exploring the licensed prostitution industry in America. This series has a specific focus on the legal system that exists within Nevada, which allows sex workers and brothels to be licensed at a county level. Nevada stands as the only state in the United States with such a regulatory framework. In this episode, I have the privilege of hosting a conversation with Bella Cummins, who I've seen referred to as the American Madam. She's the owner and operator of a licensed brothel in the state of Nevada. Bella joined me to shed light on the experience of running a brothel. During the conversation, she discusses criticisms and some of the positive impacts she's seen with the industry. To see all of the episodes that have been released in this series to date, please go to thecolememo.com/sex. Once again, that's thecolememo.com/sex. I'm excited to share that I recently had the opportunity to visit Bella's brothel in Wells, Nevada. Stay tuned. I recorded a comprehensive tour of the premises and conducted interviews with Bella and her employees during my visit. This exclusive content will be featured in an upcoming episode of The Cole Memo. You're listening to The Cole Memo. I'm your host, Cole Preston. Each episode is available in audio, video, and transcript formats. To access your preferred format, simply check the episode description you're currently listening to. There, you'll find a link that will direct you to my website where you can view the transcript and discover the platforms offering this episode in audio or video. If you're having trouble locating the episode description on your chosen platform, take note of the episode number and visit thecolememo.com. There, you can easily locate the corresponding episode and access the audio, video, and transcripts. Additionally, you might find any links to any references we make during the episode, allowing you to further explore the topics that were discussed. If you're not tuning in via Patreon, it's worth noting that you're hearing this episode after our loyal patrons. If you'd like to become a patron and support the show, visit thecolememo.com/Patreon. It's a fantastic way to contribute and support my content. However, one of the most valuable ways to support the show is entirely free. Subscribe to or follow the show. Leave a positive review from wherever you're listening to this episode. Mark this episode as a favorite, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or post a review. Your engagement and support means the world to me. Today is December 28th, 2023. This conversation was originally recorded around August of 2023. Enjoy this episode of The Cole Memo, featuring the American Madam, Bella Cummins. Bella, thank you for joining me on the show. How are you doing today?
Really good, Cole. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and please introduce yourself to our listening audience.
I'm Madam Bella Cummins, and I am the longest, I'm going to say serving madam, I'm sure in the country and maybe the world. So I've been a madam for 37 years. So I know a lot.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is make sure that I answer everyone's questions in a way that works for individuals that maybe have never, ever been exposed to what I call legal, sensual, sexual services.
Yeah. And I just have to ask because if it's not, this your name's just perfect. Just a yes or no question. Is Bella Cummins your stage name?
No,
Wow, it's your
no,
real name?
yes.
Oh my
So my
goodness.
real name is Bella Shauna
Oh, okay.
Cummins. All right, but
Okay.
you know when journalists write about a person, they throw this in like you are not really. I'm going to say your first name or the Madam Bella. It's always Cummins. I
Yeah.
I think in a way, you know, it would help if they would just shorten that up and just do Madam Bella or something like that versus that standard um, journalist approach.
Yeah, totally understand. So you said you've been in the business for 37 years?
Yes, I'm only 28.
Nice, nice. Hey, yeah. Made it in a
So,
bit
but
early.
I really have been. The time has flown by, and you know, I'm never going to say it was an accident that I wound up uh, owning Bella's Hacienda Ranch. But when I first was involved, it was really just called the Hacienda. And my late husband had bought in as a silent partner. Well, after it took almost everything we owned, and which meant it was all in hock, he needed for me to step up and figure out the bookkeeping, figure out how to run it, take something that really should have been profitable and seemed to be falling on hard times.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And yeah, tell me a little bit of how and why you got into the business. I'm just curious.
Um, Prior to David Andrews was his name, to us getting together, I had a restaurant out in Mound House, which is very, very close to all those properties that eventually Dennis Hoff uh, accumulated. But they were all different owners, and there was about four at that time. And my restaurant was very, very close to uh, those houses. And so all of these owners or madams would come in and they'd have little meetings and they'd talk, or one at a time would come in and I'd talk to them. And I was very young. And so there were things that I wondered about, like, well, why are the houses located like right in the middle of the district of what we'd call wrecking yards or junk yards back then? And it was because with their location there weren't going to be any houses to push them out. So it was a strategy to put them, because nobody wants to live next to a junkyard or a wrecking yard. So I that made sense. I went to see a few of those houses after I sold my restaurant, and I thought, well, those houses really didn't interest me. However, I understood and I was learning. So eventually, David and we did meet. I met him in the restaurant, and we got together. And of course, he was the guy that owned the hacienda. So there's a fly in here. Get out of here!
Those things are so
I
frustrating.
know you may have to edit that out, but
No, it's okay.
so when I finally went up to see the hacienda, it was pretty run down, and it had been through really great times. However, when I-80 was being built, there was a 10-year period where all small towns from Windover to Reno uh, had barricades on the exit where all tourists had to come through the town and go out the other side of town. That lasted, excuse me, that lasted 10 years. And then one day the barricades came down and it turned uh, towns like Wells into a ghost town. And the whole 10 years was supposed to be so these smaller communities could figure out how to thrive. What was going to be the attraction for people to stop?
Right.
Well,
Because,
that meant that as I was stepping on, you could shoot off a cannon inside that brothel and never hit anybody. But we were brainstorming and we decided that a CB radio, you know what that is, would be the solution because everyone had a CB.
right.
So we would be able to talk to everybody. And then pretty soon we had 75 vehicles in the parking lot you know, on a weekend. So we were creative. And and of course I also learned, how things could be mismanaged or how there was an element of dishonesty in, I won't just say this business, but it included this business. And so I set off on a course 37 years ago, realizing that people could be honest and they just needed to realize why they should be honest. And so for 37 years, every day was working towards the courtesan run brothel, the only courtesan run brothel.
Explain that
And
for folks that don't know what you mean, please.
well, what that means is there's no manager, there's no outside help that's called bartenders, hostesses, someone that comes in and does the laundry, someone that comes in and does the cleaning. I mean, this is all handled within house. And I the women that choose to work with me are totally self-starters and they're honest. And I have actually, when I was moving back towards this area, I left only courtesans in that house for a week. And when I came back, they'd never missed a time on their CB radio schedule. All the money was there, and a lot of money was there. And they had done everything just the way I had helped them learn how to do it. And that told me right there that it could be even more.
Right. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. So, it's cool to hear that it could take on its own form. You know what I mean? Run itself, so to say.
And hiring individuals that have never been in the industry makes it difficult to really put them in a position to help the courtesans, excuse me, make the dollars that they came there to make because it's out of their mental capacity to understand the hourly wage versus, um, let's just say, large quantities of money per hour. And so it actually, uh, I'm going to say it's like a conflict where if, let's just say, a courtesan wants to make $1,000 a day, and I hire someone outside that's never, ever, ever imagined making $1,000 in a day. They are never going to metaphysically be in alignment with the success of that lady, of that courtesan. So then put about 8 ladies in there, and they all want to make the $1,000, and this person I've hired as staff just melts down. That it's out of their realm of the possibilities to go, oh, we're going to bring $8,000 in or something better. And so it over the years when I would do that, we'd have snags. And I thought, well, that's why. So even though there were many, many, many times that it seemed as though I did everything incorrect, I know in my heart it was still moving forward to this place, to this time when uh, when the idea of decriminalization and legalization, even though really they're two different things, they're at least going in a parallel direction. Because first of all, just to be human and want to have a consenting, exchange of two adults never means that either one of them should be made a criminal. So I'm sharing that the legalization merely gives, let's say, individuals that might never be able to interact with another adult without many, many forms of rejection, would have a place to go. And in all of my years, there's other reasons. People never always want a partner for life. Maybe people got tired of splitting their stuff just to have a sexual relationship. Or I have individuals that are so busy with their career that they don't have time, but they have time to stop and meet new ladies, and there's no obligation, and no one feels badly about anything. It's just it's a everybody has a different reason for wanting to either go to a brothel or to want to do escort or some other form of how to meet someone safely without manipulation, without with understanding that money is going to change hands. It's the, if it's what I call uh, at least one of the individuals are in the business of sensual sexual services. So, right now we aren't doing Bitcoin. So it gets to be American currency.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you saying right now you don't do Bitcoin because you did it in the past or what?
No, I think right now Bitcoin's a little in trouble. So
Okay.
we don't have one of those machines yet.
Well, it's like with as volatile as Bitcoin, to your point, it's like it's a blowjob for a Bitcoin. I mean 2 Bitcoin. I mean 0.75 Bitcoin. I mean, you know what I'm saying? How the
Yeah,
value changes.
1.34.
Right, 1.34. So
Yeah. So, those are things that right now, that's the means of barter.
sure. And you've mentioned a few things already. CB radio. I feel like, by the way, that was like the earliest form of social media, if you
It
think about it.
was.
Yeah.
And do you know when I drive down the road, I-80, Interstate 80, there are more CB antennas on these long haul drivers'
Right.
trucks than ever before, or
Hmm.
since it went through the, oh, well, we'll just all have a cell phone.
Right.
It's it's like the new pop thing again.
Yeah.
And we still talk on the radio and still invite them in, or we can go pick them up because, Wells, believe it, there's 5 truck stops.
Hmm.
5. So that's a lot. And it's a lot of people that are going to stop there that we can reach. And if nothing else, they're just going to know we're there. And they may tell someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Really quick, where exactly is your brothel located? You said Wells or
It's Wells, Nevada. The north, I'm sorry, the the crossroads is like Highway 93 and I-80. All
Mhm.
right. It's the crossroads of the United States in the South. I'm going to call it the Southwest, that goes from Canada to Mexico and coast to coast. Everyone comes through Wells, period. Get out of here. Everyone. So they're going to stop.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, if we do the radio in like 30-minute shifts, and the gals, it's 3 or 4 times a day that they get on and they advertise for themselves.
Nice.
And, they share things like, uh, besides directions, they can say, we have short parties for guys on the go that start at a few $100s.
Are
Those
they like
mid-range parties are
are
the
they like
most
breaker
popular.
breaker 6 9?
No, breaker, breaker. It's 1 9.
I know, but I was
But
saying
you're
six
right. I
nine.
like the
Yeah.
6 9.
Yeah, there you
So,
go.
but that, the idea is we can tell drivers information that
Yeah.
doesn't say what they're going to get and how much.
Right.
We give them payment options.
Hmm.
So they can describe themselves. They can say, um, if you'd like a sneak peek of me, go to bellas.us, and then the lineup page comes up, and uh, he can scan through all the courtesans that are on, uh,
On tour.
in-house, I should say,
Yeah.
in-house today. Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, back to I was asking what sets apart your establishments? What do you feel sets apart your establishments? You mentioned, courtesan run. What are some other things that you feel like sets apart your establishments or your establishment?
That I'm going to say the type of ladies that work with me. Okay. And the reason I say the type of ladies is because they have an education. Uh, they're they're non-judgmental. They have the ability to talk to anyone and to actually, uh, I'm going to say, be exactly what each client might be looking for. So, but the location is really important because without a great location, you have to sit and sort of wait for people to show up or for cabs to bring them, or, where in that northeastern part of Nevada, we are the first brothel from Windover, or which I should say Utah, or Idaho. So we've got two states to draw from that are both going to use those highways. And then advertising. We can advertise in those two states. Of course, we could reach into California because we're a destination. People can fly in because there's a little airfield called Harriet Field. And it was built, I believe, either the Navy or the Army, but it's a long runway. So it can even do like small jets, which I think is pretty fun to go pick them up.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
So the
cool.
girls always kid that we're going to go pick them up in the soccer van.
Dang. That makes me sad because I left just about that area of Nevada. So it sounds like just about a month ago or so. So I must have driven right past your establishment. I wish we would have connected earlier, but hey, maybe that'll be the next place we chat is in your establishment. So,
Wouldn't that be wonderful? It's
God, it would be
really
cool.
nice.
It would be really cool. Here's a thing that I feel sets apart your establishments. Your women talk to me. Like Kiki came on my show. She's one of the women that works for you, and she's able to openly talk about how, about working there and telling people to come there, which you mentioned advertising earlier. For folks that don't know, you can't advertise in Nevada. So the way that you're able to do that is, people come on shows like mine and we can talk about the show. That's not advertising, right? But my experience with reaching out to some of the women at other brothels is they tell me that they can't talk. And actually, Kiki was one of those women where she came from a brothel that said she couldn't talk. And now that's what she said she loved about your brothel was that you told her that she's allowed to do media and stuff. And I wanted to ask you, like, why do you think that other brothels aren't like letting people do that? Like when you speak of Dennis Hoff like that, I thought that's what like was his shtick, like do media, do media, do media, you know?
Right. Um, I believe that our freedom of speech has been taken away from us. And I also feel with all my heart that these ladies should be able to talk openly about what they do, why they do it, why they choose me, or why I choose them. Because let's face it, we interview each other. We both have the same business license, just mine costs more. So I want them to speak out. They have a reason that they do it legally. And I and I'm really glad you brought that up, because most houses want to censor what is said. They want to look good. They would never want a lady to say something that would be embarrassing. Okay, well, how's she going to learn how to speak? How's she going to learn how to speak up? And in the older times, maybe maybe some of the ladies weren't as eloquent with their speech. But I don't work with ladies like that, if they exist anymore. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. But the ones that want to apply at Bella's Hacienda Ranch and go through the process of becoming a legal courtesan working with me, I would I would welcome anything they have to say. Uh, I'm going to say positive or negative, but I would like to believe that if there's something negative, that we talk about how to how to change that, because every business has to evolve. This isn't the type of house where there's a lockdown policy. I don't even have a contract. Now, why don't I have a contract? Because if they get there and they go, oh my goodness, this just isn't going to work for me, Cole, I would say, okay, do you have enough money to get home? It's got to be a win-win. And so when I'm interviewing ladies, and I do the interviewing, I might talk to them for an hour so that they have some idea of who is Bella. Why would I embrace all this homeostasis of what I've been doing, what I've been able to count on financially, and go to some place, maybe far from home, with no guarantees?
Right.
And I believe in my heart that that's why when they do arrive, they turn into a Bella's courtesan. They don't leave. And, I'd say last year there were probably four that
Yeah.
came in and they just said, I see, I understand, I'm just not ready. Perfect. I think. And that way the bridge is always there. And we can know that when that gal is ready, that it'll be simple. She'll have this idea of what her pseudonym is really going to be about.
Yeah.
Because they have themselves, like
Right.
Marilyn Monroe
Hmm.
and Norma Jean. They got to keep them separate. They've got to, Norma Jean is going to get in the way of Marilyn on stage doing the in-service work she came to do. So it's like it's like taking Norma Jean and putting her in the wardrobe with duct tape and her cell phone on mute,
Right.
so that when that doorbell rings, the ladies can take what I call their in-service personality and do what they know they have a calling to do. And it isn't for everyone. It's ever since the pandemic, the post-pandemic, there's way more laughter and all of these things. And I don't think there's quite so much sex.
Really.
Yeah.
Well, I have the pandemic on, that's one of the only things I really had prepared to talk to you about. So I want to get back to that. But I just wanted to dwell on that a little bit further. It feels like your approach is like, hey, there's nothing to hide. And in fact, I benefit from my women being able to speak up and speak out. That was kind of my like, I kind of wondered when I directly not only asked about some of the women, but I even reached out to the owner. I won't say her name, but you know who I'm talking about. Um, she didn't feel comfortable welcoming me and making immediate accommodations like you have been comfortable to do. And like my number one thought is like, and just correct me if I'm wrong, please, but like, my number one thought when somebody says that is like, do you have something to hide?
Mhm. Now that's a
Like, why
really good
not?
question.
Because they
Uh,
were so open about it, like that's why I thought like that's going to be a no-brainer. I thought asking somebody like you would be harder because maybe you'd be like less trustworthy or something like that. You're a smaller operation.
I
You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't be
yes.
trusting as me versus them. They've been doing this for years, and all of a sudden they're like, no.
Mm. Well, interestingly enough, I I like to speak out, and I mean not beating a drum. I never need to beat a drum. But when I speak out, it's to help individuals gather knowledge about their humanness and if why brothels exist. Why should someone stand outside and think they know what's going on? All right. And when another house doesn't want to speak up, I am like you. What's going on? Is it, and maybe they're nervous. Maybe they think they're going to say something that's wrong or embarrassing, or they've never talked out loud about this before. And I, I've given like upper level business lectures, like at the community college, like the 300 level business and the entrepreneurship. And I like to talk about how that actually parallels any business. And with the brothel business being so misunderstood, it's really about people understanding that no one's in that house running around naked and being crazy. It's a class act. Maybe some of the other houses aren't a class act.
Is that what you think? Like that's maybe that because I know I heard about a shooting recently there. And I was even going to try to interview that woman that apparently was involved. But she quickly didn't want to speak to me anymore because of that happening. Which I get, it's a shooting. So, but like, do you think
Right.
like is that emblematic of what might be going on there? Like,
Fear. Fear. All right. People are always afraid that somebody's going to put them in a position of embarrassment.
hmm,
Well, I already knew in my heart that whatever I might be asked, there would be nothing that you were going to ask that I would find embarrassing. Because I could tell everyone, I have made so many errors, but I don't feel badly about them. And sometimes I had to do them several times thinking they were different, and they weren't. I was just like, is this the same mud that's on my face? But people take life so seriously. And it's meant to be lived. It's meant to be lived sexually, sensually. And and it's the one thing that couples can't talk about. It's the one thing that people have the most fear about. And yet, by golly, they all have hormones. They all want to do it.
yeah.
And it doesn't even matter their sexual preference. It's just It's part of us being alive. And we get to learn how to do it correctly so that, like when Bella's gals get the opportunity to speak out, that they can become good speakers with their truth,
Right.
not made up, not fabricated, but who are they becoming? And I do share with the ladies that choose to work with me. I said, you came to me to become more of who you came to be. And you're going to be this far along today. And when you know better, you'll do better. But in the meantime, lighten up. This isn't serious. These guys come here to have a good time. They're already afraid. They're
Right.
already afraid of rejection.
Right.
And I have been the only, we'll call it staff in that building. Uh, I'm going to say at least 8 times in my career. The only person, and the ladies.
Oh,
And I mean, I learned a lot about everything you can imagine
yeah.
because, whether I was there before the internet, before HIV, before condoms, before there was really a good lube. I mean, truly, I am, I'm way before all the crazy stuff that is now like common.
Yeah.
It's a common practice. Like the ladies, when I say, well, you know, it used to be nobody wore condoms, and they're like mortified. What? I said, I said, but it's true. The
Yeah.
biggest problem was pregnancy.
That's crazy. That is crazy to think about. Um, you know, what do you think that like sorry, I was just setting something in my little shelf here. Do
Okay.
you think that I guess let me put it this way. Were you surprised to hear what I said? Because again, I was surprised. Like I thought it was going to be hard to get a hold of people like you since you were a small operation. Were you like surprised to hear that I didn't have any luck going to the Bunny Ranch, for example?
No,
No?
no. It would have been the same with any of what is referred to as the big houses. All right. They have policies in place. They have contracts. I don't even know what's on them.
Sure.
And it doesn't matter. I am what those houses call a, it's like I'm part of them, but I'm more of a mid-size house.
Mm,
I could have 14 ladies. All right. And typically what I have is somewhere between 8 and 11. Okay. Sometimes 12. And the ladies that work at the other houses, when they've worked for me, they all say the same thing. Bella, I make more money with you. But, and then whatever their but is, whatever their however is, meaning, well, maybe their home's over there. Maybe they have children. Maybe. There are all these
sure.
things. But as far as enjoying working at Bella's with me, I haven't had one that had a problem. I believe that Dennis Hoff, and I said this in an interview during the closed, we were all closed down, the pandemic, and when he passed away, I did. I said, I'm sorry for everyone that loved him, that he had to go. But I said, now he's out of my way. He was Nevada's pimp. To me, he's kind of stood in the dark.
Yeah.
I'm the American madam. I've been in business longer than he was ever in business, even though even now today, I think we would probably be the same age. But he had a different take on how to run the business and, let's say, control and his vision. But as the American madam, I want things to move forward. I want the women to understand their power, to understand that this is a short career, that if they're going to make the money, what's next? So when I interview, I say, what are your dreams and goals? How can I help you help me? Because those are really, really important to a young woman. She might be 21, she might be 44, or somewhere in between. But it's like they come to me to be the very best mentor they can find that will hold them accountable and 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 still be kind. Like
Yeah.
I the one thing that I have to be is um, the consistent. You have to consistently have a good time. You have to consistently be ready to to bend, really, because they every day is different. What works one day might need to be uh, just one degree course correction, and then it might come back. But it's in flux all the time because every one of us matters and every one of us has a different idea of what we require, like the compassion, the great listening skills. People rarely hear another person. They're usually thinking about what they're going to say next, which means they didn't hear a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, it seems like you just described many different ways that your leadership style differs from the recently passed. I say recently, it's been almost 10 years. Well, no,
A few.
2016, 2017 was when he passed. Anyways, what are some other ways that you feel your leadership, if any, that your leadership style differs from his? Just to give an example that I've heard that I think differs from your approach. It sounds like you seem like, first of all, you hire a pretty like a good amount of girls. Like it seems like there's always too many women at some of those places. And I know some guys might be listening right now, like there's no such thing as too many women, but I don't know, like I went there and it was a Saturday night and it was fucking dead. And so maybe that was just an anecdotal experience of mine, but like to me, there were way too many women there. And I know that they had to pay rent that night and they didn't get the money out of me. You know what I mean? So, but to wrap up that thought really quick, another way that I heard he would like pit the girls against one another because he had this idea that if there weren't competition amongst the women, that they weren't fighting hard enough or something like that. It doesn't sound like that's your approach.
Cole, my approach is that everyone gets along. We don't have to be best friends because we're working associates.
Sure.
However, at Bella's Hacienda Ranch, every lady is thrilled when another lady is chosen and, let's say, makes her money. There's a celebration of, wow, good for you. And what does that do, really? It brings it back tenfold because what does the secret reveal? You have to want it for everyone in order for it to come to you. So the pie is exponential. And so if there's 8 women, then the pie should be 8 times bigger. Now, if a house is has a pie that gets to support, let's just say 20 women, 25 women, it isn't going to work financially for everyone. And at Bella's, it gets to. Everyone has an off week, but by the end of the month or by the end of the year, they've done really well. And then they build regulars, and their self-esteem builds as they become better negotiators, better. I tell them all, you are a seductress, a temptress, and an enchantress. And how are you going to present yourself as all three of those and mean it? Because that's where the fun is. The fun is in being in this, I'm going to call it a one night stand, and having it be like backflips off the headboard, and by the way, make the tuck, miss the fan. So, you know, it's a sensuality is what we're missing in our lives. Never everyone, but we are. You know, that holding someone else's hand, the cuddling, the any time a person in their in even in their personal relationships gets complacent, and it isn't that same type of romance that you had in the beginning, then a person's making an error. It is so easy to stay so close, but it is work because it gets to be something that's a cellular memory at a level that becomes so important to, I'm going to say, the individual doing it,
Yeah.
that it brings on this whole new level of experiencing what the heart is supposed to feel like when it just gives off love.
Hmm.
I mean, love for everyone. It becomes this big
Right.
rhythm. And I know it can sound kind of silly maybe to some, but that's what we're missing. We just aren't kind enough to one another. And then in our closest relationships, there's more to be done. You know, my beautiful husband and I have been together 23 years. If we're watching TV at night, he's still holding my hand. You know, but we had to become that. We had to remember each other at that level. So
Yeah.
when clients come into Bella's and they're nervous, how do we have that nervousness be replaced with acceptance and the fact that life might be really hard out there, but you're perfect just the way you are today. Come on in.
Yeah. Well, hey, I love that. And congratulations on 23 years with your husband. That's really awesome. Um,
Thank you.
I I will move on. I want to move on to like descheduling versus legalization, but I wanted to ask you again, did what I just say about not to dwell on other houses, but did I what I just said again surprise you at all? The idea of like a toxic environment where you pit people against each other. Have you heard of that before? And I ask you this because I'm from Illinois, so I'm trying to make sure that like I'm not from Nevada, and I want to make sure that the whole rumor grapevine. I want to make sure that I'm not just talking out of my ass. So like, if you've also heard that, that does a lot to like make it seem like it's not just bullshit.
I will tell you what I have, what I believe. Okay. I know what I've heard, but that's still third party.
Sure.
But I see in the words I hear that women aren't meant to get along, and then they get reprimanded for that. But something is happening that pits them against one another. And so I agree with you that I feel like these women are, I want to say this correctly. It's like women were taught to get the other woman in the back first. All right. And it isn't how it's supposed to be. A woman should have another woman's back. All right, so that's how it is at Bella's, but I am never hearing that coming from other houses. Like there's this, it's like an animosity. It seems as though it's like an evilness that they are so
Did I lose you?
100% that there are too many brothels
Oh, you're
uh
back.
out. Too many.
I,
Are you still there?
yeah, I lost you for a second. You're back though.
Okay. There's too many brothels out there.
Lost you again. Oh, you're back.
Are
I
you there?
wonder. Yeah, I
You know,
wonder if.
we're having this huge storm right now. It just started.
Oh, darn, darn. Well, Bella, a storm got in our way yesterday. We were just getting to a really, really good part of our conversation, I felt. And then a storm came in and we got interrupted. So if folks are wondering why I'm wearing a different shirt at this time, why you're wearing a different shirt, it's because it's a new day. But we're back together. And I wanted to pick up where we left off. I asked you about the culture, the difference of culture between in your establishments compared to some of the larger houses. And one of the last things you were saying before we got cut off was that it seems like instead of the women having each other's backs at these establishments, that they're looking for a way to almost like stab somebody else in the back first instead of having each other's backs. I don't know if that helps jog your memory on where you were, but
Yeah, absolutely. And I firmly believe that uh, in any business, but we're really talking about the brothel industry and courtesans, that women learn how to be respectful to one another, that they aren't enemies. They should never ever have been pitted against one another like someone's better than the other, because it's never been true. And as I do my training and mentoring, I share with them there's only one of them, and they have to be their self because everyone else is already taken. So they've got to be themselves, and how to take that and understand the only person that they wind up in competition with is themselves. And how's that working for them? If they aren't feeling good about themselves, well, then that means somehow or another they felt like they were imperfect. And from what I can see, if we're all born, if you will, in the likeness of and perfect, who told us we were imperfect? They had no right to do that. And a person could say, well, you don't know, I have these anomalies or whatever it is. That isn't the any anomaly has nothing to do with the perfection within. What a person has to offer another business. And in what I'm going to call the sex industry, sensual service, providers, they're doing something that less than, I'm going to say, 1% of the world can even do, to actually be in service to another in a way that that's, I'm just going to say it's good for both of them. It brings something to each one of them, and they'll never know what it is, but it'll help them become a better, somehow a better person, a person that actually feels better about themselves. It won't be is like right away, but as time goes on, it lingers in the subconscious, and we begin to understand that we're really here to have a good time.
yeah, and one of the ways one of the workers phrased it to me is like that attitude that it sounds like Dennis Hoff had was encouraging a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset. In other words, there's enough for everybody, right? We don't have to be fighting each other. And one of the ways, like I said, one of the workers put it to me is we can bring in more money if we work together. Like, hey, everybody wants a threesome, so why don't I loop in one of my fellow women, and let's do that. And but like you say, it's almost like this attitude that they've been trained on in some of these larger houses is counterintuitive to upselling and bringing in more business.
Absolutely. And in my opinion, I've never been able to figure out why houses would bother to do that. It creates drama. It creates animosity. And as you just so brilliantly stated, what what would keep clients away? That energy versus the welcoming and come on in. Hey, would you like to be with me and one of my friends? We can really have some fun. And I believe that that's part of the difference in Bella's. We do a lot of double parties. We do a lot of triple parties. It's about what experience would a client like to have safely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess just again, I don't mean to dwell on this. As I told you before we parted yesterday, that I do want to talk about, some other topics, but this was like an unexpected topic that came up for me. Again, when I did this project, when I started this project, the last people that I thought I would have any issues with were the Hoff estates. I thought it would be like, hey, come on, Cole, come on in, do this thing. Because that seemed like how their attitude was. And so I guess just as a parting thought on this entire subject with the big houses, why do you think that their attitude has changed? Is it just simply that Dennis died and that he's not the confident man that can be on the camera anymore? Or do you have any guesses as to why they, I didn't think that I would have any troubles with them, you know?
I'm actually glad that you asked that question. And I know that I have to answer in what I consider my opinion or a hypothetical way.
Yeah.
But Dennis Hoff was what I call a huge energy. And yes, he had Madame Suzette at his side. And I believe with all my heart that Madame Suzette doesn't want the limelight. She didn't want Dennis to pass away. It was never her intention to fill his shoes. And how many times do we go through life thinking we're going to be here and the date is open ended? And then when that happens, how do you fill that man's shoes? Even though I don't really believe he was great for the industry, he did get a lot of attention. But I also feel like it was never a good thing for him to portray himself as Nevada's pimp. He didn't sound like a leader. He didn't sound like he wanted these women to really accomplish something. And me, as the American madam, I'm the spokesperson now. I'm the 37 years, the only woman that's ever been in business legally, in this legal industry for that long. And I'm in the light. I'm the one saying, women, here's the direction. And I know in my heart that that's a reasonable answer to why the door seems closed and locked. She just doesn't want to. And the ladies, she doesn't really want them to speak out because I don't think it was part of her um, job description with Dennis to vet who's going to say the right thing on behalf of, let's call it the Hoff Empire, the Hoff group of brothels. And no one wants to make a mistake, but what if a lady gets interviewed and it's embarrassing? But what if it's her take on how things are going? Does that really have to tarnish the house? Oh gosh, I would hope no. And I would hope that there's such great communication in every establishment that anything that comes up that needs to be addressed and needs to transition gets talked about. But I just I don't think you're ever going to get in there, Cole.
Yeah. Dang. It's just, I grew up and it's nothing. It's honestly just a bias of me growing up because when I grew up, one of the first people, even though, I don't agree with him on everything that I saw was Dennis Hoff. And Dennis Hoff is the person that I credit for making me a supporter of the legalization of sex work. You know what I mean? And so
Yes.
that's why I think it was like such a blow for me because I was like, damn, did I just ask too late? Like if I would have asked when Dennis was alive, yeah, I felt like he would have been like, come on, Cole, come on, but
And everything happens in the correct time,
yeah,
all right, with the correct people. And I'm going to say that in order for this rural industry to evolve, it has to become empowering for clients and women alike. I have spent more years standing behind the bar helping men, way more men than women, saying, what are your dreams and goals? Well, you don't know what happened to me. Hold it. Bella doesn't let us talk about that. She wants us to talk about our dreams and goals, our sexuality, where we're going, and what's good about today. And in this industry that evolves sensual sexual services, this is an important part of how it evolves. And I'm never going to say that houses can't have their rules and regulations. I'm saying within those rules and regulations, there has to be empowerment and acceptance for clients and women collectively
yes,
so that we benefit even more than just a release.
right.
Because I'm aware that now, as we talked about yesterday, there's more laughter, there's more communication. I mean, talking, listening. And yes, the other part fits in there too. But it's as if people want to wake up and express their humanness at a deeper level.
Hmm.
But that still includes the touch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what you said earlier, I definitely think is on par. It was one of my first guesses, in fact, that maybe Suzette just didn't sign up for the gig that she's in now. You know what I mean? Like she didn't want to be in the limelight like Dennis did and like you are comfortable with being, like that's just not who she is, and maybe she doesn't feel comfortable, like you say, if some woman were to say something bad, she doesn't feel comfortable or confident enough to just be like, stuff happens sometimes, but that doesn't happen regularly in our house. This is a legal establishment where we, you know what I mean? Like there
Yes,
takes a level of confidence for you to come on and just because as you said yesterday, you're able to have that confidence because you have nothing to hide. Nothing's going on. You know what I mean? So
correct. And the more that I get to talk with beautiful souls like yourself, the more people are going to begin to understand what happens at Bella's Hacienda Ranch. I am unable to speak about other houses,
sure.
but I believe that everything has to evolve or it dies.
Yeah. And just to move on in our subjects, because I feel like we dwelled a lot on the Hoff houses, or the big houses as we call them. Um, you know, the way that these rules came to be, I have always found interesting because again, I just said I'd move on from Dennis Hoff, but one of the things that Dennis Hoff put in my mind when he would talk about this was that Nevada legalization was this sort of like progressive, open-minded, hippie cool reform that happened in the 70s. And I've done a lot of research into it. And I forgot the book today, but it's Brothel Wars. Have you read that book or heard about that book?
Oh, I was involved in one of those.
Oh, you were? We'll have
Yeah,
to
oh,
talk
I
about
was.
that.
Oh my God. That's a whole nother story, but oh my God, Cole, there there are people that I'm going to say right now, gentlemen, that buy brothels. And I walk up to them and I can hand them the golden key and they'll toss it right back at me. And I'll have a full parking lot and they'll be looking out the window. And it's like they don't want to hear. They don't want to, you've got to crawl before you can walk and then before you can run. And when I first came on in the 80s, I'm going to tell you, you could shoot off a cannon in that building and never hit anybody. But the place across the street was booming. And I needed to know what she knew that I didn't know.
Oh, I didn't realize there's a brothel across the street from yours.
What there is. And it
Still to this
is,
day?
yes,
Oh,
it
wow.
it is it's a um it's a collection of 1950 trailers pushed under a roof. And even now, I went over, I handed the brand new owner the key, and he handed it back to me, and they have no business. But I know what I'm talking about. I know how how it works. I know how to attract clientele. But for about 23 years now, that beautiful want to be license across from me is no different day after day after day. And my house is filled with lovely ladies. What's the difference? Leadership. It's the direction I'm going.
Have you
And
ever thought about buying that brothel?
I can only own one.
Oh, really? Is it like a county thing?
Yes, it's actually a city ordinance within the, but I don't know how the county doesn't rule that, but the city. And the first thing I'd have to do is bulldoze it.
Hmm.
And then there wouldn't be one standing there anyway because it's 1950 trailers. What are you going to
Right.
do with that? How do you
Hmm.
make that the Taj Mahal? You can't. So I, I don't look next door. I know in my heart when I was struggling the most, I was in my own way. I needed to be progressive. I needed to learn things that I didn't know yet. And so now it's at a whole new level. Now it's really about what I had a vision of in 1987. But like Garth Brooks' song, it's a good thing I didn't know it'd be 30 something years later. I would have said, you got to be kidding me, right?
Hmm.
And maybe I wouldn't have thought that I had the stamina to do that, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm able to speak out. Hired another beautiful young lady from one of the big ranches today who's gonna, you she's gonna uh, honor her contract. But it's like I said, that's an important thing. Honor your contract. You have to have integrity. You have to have an impeccable word. I said, these are
Hmm.
all things that are super important at Bella's Hacienda Ranch.
Yeah.
We live by the four agreements there, which is an impeccable word. Uh, Never take anything personally, never make assumptions, and always do your best. And they are four really difficult things to do moment by moment.
Yeah. So does that mean that girl that you hired today, are you saying that by honoring her contract, maybe she has to like wait a little bit before she comes and works there? Or what do you
Yeah,
mean?
yes, it's because she's going to get to wait most of a month. But I told her, I said, that's okay. You're learning. If there's ladies there that know more than you do, learn from them and bring that with you in your tool belt so you can understand why you went there to begin with.
Right, but you get what I'm asking. You mentioned it yesterday that some of the other houses have them sign a contract. Are you saying that you hired this woman and her contract maybe says like she can't work for a period of time or something? Is that what you're saying,
Yeah,
or
it,
am I
it
missing?
means she has to stay. I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood. She gets
Yeah.
to stay at that particular brothel until the end of her contract.
Oh,
And that's good. Keep, follow through with what you thought was best for you, because in the long run she's going to find out it was. It may never be the house she ever returns to, but it'll be what she needed to know from that house before joining with me and
yeah.
the other ladies.
Can I ask you a question that I don't expect you to know the answer to? What do you think would happen if she just said fuck it and came and worked for you anyway? Like, would they like punish her, or is there like a fine that can be issued? I'm just curious.
I am sure that something would happen uh, financially. That would be, you've left us early. It could be a percentile
Mm.
of what, and I understand that for
Well,
them,
there are similar agreements in other industries. It's like this idea of non-compete. Have you heard of that?
right? But in this case, it would leave them an open room that they don't have someone
Mm.
on the books to just slide into. Okay. And so that let's call it the penalty, reimburses them a few cents or a few dollars.
Oh, okay. So you're saying because the woman, okay.
Okay.
I feel like you just made it clear for me, but can I try to say it back to you really quickly?
Yes.
It's like you made an agreement with the woman that she's going to be there. I'm just going to throw out a random period of time, 3 months. And by
Okay.
agreeing on that and signing that paperwork, you're expecting her to pay the room and board and, half of all of her bookings for 3 months.
Correct.
And so if she doesn't do that, well, like you say, you have an open room and then you're not getting the same income as you had expected. Therefore, a problem comes up. Is that pretty?
Absolutely. So in other words, you might only have that room vacant for a day or a week. However, it's like makes the company juggle
Right,
a
right.
little bit to slide
Fill the
someone
room.
in on short notice.
Yeah.
And ladies do travel to the houses. So it's important that whether it's important that whether it's a contract or an impeccable word, that I could count on their word
Right.
unless there's an unforeseen emergency. But that's, extended
Yeah,
circumstance.
and their word is the importance of their word, just for folks that are listening and aren't clear. It's that you're paying rent and they need to be able to pay their mortgage. I mean, and so they rely on your rent as part of that agreement, you know?
Yes, the paying of the overhead of a business that's expensive to run.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for like helping me to understand that because at first I wasn't exactly sure what you were saying. But since we just brought up like rent and there's other costs that these
Mhm.
women have to pay, just at like Bella's Hacienda, I'm curious if you're able to tell how much does a woman like owe, for lack of better words, on day one? With the medical, sheriff's card, rent, food. I don't know if that goes into it.
On day one, um, the most important thing is that she has a medical clearance, and that's $150.
Oh,
If I was to give you the whole total of what it costs to go into business for two of the three would actually be yearly charges. Okay. A $200 Nevada state business license is a yearly charge. A sheriff's card or work card from the city of Wells is um, actually $75 right now and 25 cents. But that's good for a year. So
oh, okay.
those are two yearly charges. On the medical, it's 150. on the first visit, the next three visits is only 100 because it's merely a culture. And then they would be back to blood and culture for 150, following 3 weeks, the same, just a culture, $100 each week. So it's actually incredibly affordable for the business expenses that are the legality part of it. But there's other things like travel. Where do they live?
True.
Because at Bella's, they cook for themselves individually. Of course, they get to go to the store and pick up a few things for a few days, just until they're, let's say, know exactly what they're going to want to cook, how they're going to want to eat, and
Sure.
every lady has her own place in the refrigerator. We've got a lot of refrigerators, we've got a lot of freezers, and that's theirs. That's where, you know, that's still part of their business plan. How do they want to maintain the body they have? How many days a week do they work out? Are they available 24 hours a day? Do they really need their sleep? And they work 12 or 16 hours a day. That's their business plan. Yes, I do expect it to evolve, but it's most important that they begin to understand that what they decide to do, they must be consistent at it. And in that part of the training, I say even an Olympic athlete has to train when they don't want to.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between success and mediocre
Yeah.
or downright failure.
Yeah. And, I was going to ask you, before I asked you, I wanted to preface it with just for our listeners that this isn't like something that's unique to the sex industry. For example, people that cut hair, they may have to rent out a space. Think of the space in the terms of sex work as the brothel, right?
Mhm.
It's your space to practice your work that you're licensed for. Do you think that's a good analogy?
Yes,
Uh,
that's where
yeah.
you hang your shingle.
Now I wanted to ask, I wanted to preface it with that so that people knew it wasn't unique to sex work. How often do you find women like going into debt? My girlfriend, for example, does used to do cutting hair and stuff, and she would quickly go into debt having to pay for like the place that she cut hair at. And so I didn't know if like this is kind of me segueing to the pandemic, but also post pandemic, like how has business been? And I'm kind of starting that conversation with asking, like, do women fall behind on some of those fees that you're talking about? Because the $150 is weekly, right?
Well, yes, that's on their medical. Um, there is a policy at many houses that if a lady books $1,000, there is no rent for that day. And the rent at Bella's is $30 a day. Okay. Typically at the end of the week, any one of the ladies will pay me somewhere between 30 and $90 rent. But they're self-starters. They're professional courtesans. And they're going to attract, I'm going to say, the clientele that's looking for them.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so, in all honesty, they're never in debt.
yeah. Yeah, I just the reason I asked that question is because I didn't ever think about how those things add up. And like one of the examples a girl gave me was, she had a $200 party, so the house gets 100, but then she also had to deduct medical, and then there's the sheriff's card, so she didn't actually like make $200 on her first party. So that's kind of where that question was coming from.
And I understand that I work to help them understand that it's at the end of the week that they're and they're independent contractors. So at the end of the year, they get a 1099. So it's never look at your first day. Come in with your 150. All right. Uh, that way they're still in the black. Okay. And then from there, uh, the rest of the paperwork catches up because there's a slight delay in order to get fingerprints.
Mm,
But in order to satisfy, and it's an important part, public safety, the medical is what is really important.
right.
And so at the end of the week, if they have, um, let's say the most they would owe is $210 at the end of the week. And so it's focusing on not daily money, that's going to take care of itself. But what is their goal by the end of the week? And they need to write it down. Okay, if they're going to make 5,000 gross, well, then they already know that's 2,500.
Right.
All right. So on
2,500 the
making,
house for our listeners.
okay, but for each one,
Oh,
for
sorry.
each, okay,
I
so for
misunderstood you.
each, right. So for each one. So
Yep.
because it's a split. All right.
Right.
So the only other things that would come off of their half would be securing their yearly business license or work card, or let's say they want to tip out to some of the staff. But there aren't hidden fees and charges at Bella's Hacienda Ranch. That half is their half.
Hmm.
And the only little bit would be a small amount of rent at the end of the week that gets determined by how many days they were um, over $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
So, in the attraction of money, just like in Think and Grow Rich, it says, how much money do you wish to attract? Write it down. And then what do you plan on exchanging for the money? There's never something for nothing. Well, what do these ladies exchange for the money? The very best experience that a client can have with them today.
Right. Yeah, and again, the that question comes from I want to acknowledge again that this is not unique to the sex industry having to pay room and board to, practice your business. But that question comes from, a person that kind of described their experience as, and by the way, this person still is supportive of sex work, but just to quote them, they said their experience was like, I came into Nevada forward thinking about the future, and very quickly got sucked into the present in what they called like this vortex of debt. And they just felt like they couldn't get out of it, So that's where that question comes from.
Cole, I hear this story more than you think. All I can share with you is that story would never come from a courtesan at Bella's. And it wouldn't be because I told her what to say. It would be because that's the truth.
Yeah.
Sometimes ladies get the wrong idea about little houses or big houses. And when they go to the incorrect house, it's devastating for them.
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah. And speaking of incorrect houses, you don't have to name any particular ones, but I've heard of these houses that exist in Nevada that people will go to, and people, like, the women there don't even speak English, and that, like, seems like they don't want to be there. Have you heard of those types of houses?
It's been a few years since I heard about that.
Hmm.
But I'm sure there's a huge possibility.
Yeah,
I'm just unaware of any at this time.
sure, sure. Um, cool. Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank
But
you for
I have taught Asian people how to speak English over
yeah.
the years. And why didn't I take the time to learn Mandarin or Chinese? It's like, come on, Bella, you can do this. You can absorb a few words, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, I was mentioning earlier that I thought of Nevada legalization as a sort of like progressive, open-minded, hippie cool reform. And when I did some research, it seemed like it was at least the beginning of it. I'm not saying that this is the way that it is today, but it seemed like at least the beginning of it in the 70s was rather like a violent libertarians in the desert defending their rights or their right to profit off of women, who they may or may not see as people. I don't get the impression that that's your idea because you're a woman.
No,
But
no, but you have that man pegged right.
yeah,
I
yeah.
met him. I did. I met him.
Did you
He
meet
was,
Walter? Are you talking about Walter?
no,
No?
no,
Okay.
no, no. It was, it was Joe,
Okay.
Joe
Joe.
Conforti. And
Yeah.
Joe, eh, when I came to Bella's, a lady that originally built the Hacienda, uh, was named Helen Carter. And she said, look, I knew Joe when he was a cab driver in New York City and didn't have shoelaces in his shoes. She said, he's not a good man. And that's a quote from Helen Carter. So I think he had some things that weren't nice about him. I do think that he found his way and profited from women. Um, by the grace of everything, he was able to somehow get this legislation in 1971. There's still a little too much, what I'm going to say, of making money from the ladies and maybe never giving back enough to help them move forward. But
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. And I think like the way that I heard it said at the time that these rules weren't meant to protect the workers or the people coming in, the patrons,
Mhm.
or the communities in which they were located, only to protect somebody like Joe that had the license that wanted to profit, off of those women.
And he did. And when my sec well, I don't know if it's in Sexual Healing, but I know it's in my memoir. But you know, he manipulated a lot of things and a lot of people probably. I think we all know he did, but to to get the notoriety he did. And there is a possibility that a little part of the Hoff personality springboarded off um, the idea of Joe Conforti.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that it's see, I mean definitely never that. I don't think it was that same harshness,
Sure.
but I think that there was a part of Dennis, that that personality of Joe Conforti, like he resonated with it a little. And and being somebody, and the big parties that he used to have, and just there was just a lot of things that I could I could picture him not never being in competition, but but wanting that same kind of power or notoriety or fame.
Sure.
And he did get it. There's people that think he wasn't the greatest, nicest guy. I didn't work or have anything to do with his brothels. I I could never say. And even if someone did tell me something, it's he's not here to qualify it. So I would say, oh, okay. But there's no truth when someone can't qualify
Right.
if it was true or not. So whatever happened, whether it's Joe Conforti or whether it's Dennis Hoff, that went to bed when they passed through. No one will actually know.
Yeah. And one of the questions I've been asking in this series is if you were going to copy and paste, do you know what I mean by that?
Hmm.
Just cool. Yeah. If you were going to copy and paste what Nevada has done into other states, what are some things that you might change? Or do you think that it would be just a simple copy and paste? Because I truly believe it should be legal across the world. But I'm asking you, as a person that works in the industry, should there be anything that we should consider before we do this nationwide or worldwide?
That is a really good question. And you're the first person to ask me this question. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And it's a little bit of a lengthy subject.
Yeah.
But
Take your time.
first of all, Nevada, when they decided that counties could decide whether they wanted to embrace the legal prostitution approved by the legislature, I believe with all my heart that the cities and the cities that are their own basic county shouldn't have somehow politically been omitted from having the same thing as rural Nevada. I feel in my heart it should have been carte blanche, across the board. You know what I mean? That might
Yeah.
have
And
not have been the correct word,
no,
but
no,
across the board.
I think that was
Okay.
correct. But
Okay. And
can you
and the
quickly
reason I say
explain?
that, and
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to say that because after watching what's happening in the two largest cities for years, it's corrupt. It's it's the side of that word prostitution that gives prostitution that energy that's dark.
Yeah. And can I
Okay,
guess,
nobody.
are the two cities Reno and Las Vegas?
Yes,
Nice.
and
Okay.
there should be a district. There should be a place that people in those cities or people visiting those cities can go to, and that would never hurt that city unless, well, it would be a benefit to the city first of all, and secondly, if there wasn't something possibly going on in these large casinos that's more like a something sexually to be questioned, they should be embracing it because Las Vegas is as much adults as children now. And it is very tarnished to have trucks with young women on the trailer, on as a banner, if you will, and a telephone number to call, and you've got families walking down the street. Or I've been in those casinos. I can point out every single escort, or I'll nicely call them that. I can see them. I know what they look like. And when they're out working and they know that they can be in certain casinos or not. But somehow or another, that 400,000 went to 600,000. Probably pretty soon it'll be a million. But there was just an amazing senator. in the legislature that
Really
because I
quick,
got.
what did you mean by those numbers? Do you mean the population?
Oh, thank you. I should have said the population. Yes.
Okay, thank
The
you. Thank you.
population, they just keep raising the number so that they just keep themselves out of reach of having to go there. And
Right. For folks that are
it
listening, there was like a
huh,
number in which um if you had more than that in your population, you were not allowed to have legal prostitution in your city. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, or in your county.
Or in your county? Thank
Yeah,
you.
either one.
Yep.
So, that was in my opinion one of those manipulative moves where, okay, we'll give the counties the ability to vote it in, but it'll basically be outlawed in the two largest cities. And I'm saying that is not a cut and paste. Okay. Well, I should say it is a cut, but
Right,
I would
right.
I would want that to be understood as legalization moves across. People, never does everyone have to go to a brothel, but they have to know where they're located. So if there's people that are looking for that they can find it and the taxes get paid. All right. If 10,000 men and 40,000 working women go into Las Vegas, and I hate to call them pimps, but I will, that 10,000, let's say there's 40,000 that do show up. Where's the tax money?
Well, and the biggest thing for me is Nevada, and I just Googled this, has the highest rate of illegal sex trade in the nation. Yet, Nevada is the only state in the United States with legal sex. So it's like, on one hand, it's the highest, Las Vegas is the highest with illegal sex, but it's the only state that has legal sex. So it's like, hold on a second. You'd think that like it'd be another state. Like you'd think that like Nevada would be the lowest, or like, I don't know, somewhere in the middle. But here we are, the only state out of 50 with a legal option, and they've got the highest rates of illegal sex trade.
That's, is that a cut and paste?
Right. Is that a cut and paste? A good point. I think I made your point for you.
You did, but that's what's happening. Okay, and yet I'm paying my fair share. All those women and men or whoever they're sharing it with, they don't pay a dime.
So what's interesting about your approach is you're saying, am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that Las Vegas and Reno should be allowed to have those. And what I find interesting about first of all, is that correct?
Yes, I will say that I know it happens in Reno, but Las Vegas is uh, really the offender here.
Sure.
They're the ones because as you know, uh, well, there is at least one house that's, I don't know, 20 miles from Reno.
Right.
So, um, and so if I was to really say Las Vegas is the conundrum
hmm And
for
and
the lead for our rating, that's where it's happening.
sure. Well, the thing that I find striking about your perspective and you being so welcoming is that, not to get back on Dennis Hoff again, but he talked a lot of shit about the illegal sex trade. He called those women dirty. In my opinion, I don't know if I told you this, Bella, but I come from like a cannabis show. We talk about legal weed, and I get
Mhm.
pretty pissed when legal weed companies try to say that like their weed is the only good weed. It's like, hold on a second. Like just because you've got
Yeah,
the license,
yeah,
right? Do you get what I'm
yes,
saying?
yes. I'm sure there is a lot of good weed out there.
Well, and for being
And
my point is though, for being a champion of sex work, it seemed weird for him to denigrate a subsect of that industry. You know what I mean? Like he's saying like
yes, I do.
those
And
women are dirty.
and I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So here's another change that we hadn't gotten to yet. All
Yes.
right. I believe with all my heart that there are brothels are important. A legal house, a place, a destination. However, there are many women that want to be massage therapists, or they want to be an escort, uh, or they really just want to be a call girl, upper end. Uh, there should be regulations that are similar for the workers in those three sectors that are in place for a courtesan inside a brothel. And by that I mean, if they have a medical clearance, a Nevada business license, and some sort of credential as a let's say, besides the Nevada state business license, they had um, a city of Reno business license because there probably isn't a work card. So they had those documents and they got arrested. And I was the judge. And they came in front of me and they said, Your Honor, I'm a sole proprietor. Here are my documents. I would throw the case out. She's merely an independent businesswoman. The same thing with massage parlors. People want to go to massage parlors. There are happy endings. Have the credentials so it isn't this under the table, anyone can get in trouble. And the escort, the same thing. If there's going to be more than just time and companionship, have the documents. And then you have four, just right there is four different avenues of public safety and um, entrepreneurial sex workers.
Yeah. I just wanted to continue to give you the space on this. Like, what are some other things that you feel um, maybe we should modify or think about before we copy and paste?
I really never see a reason for criminalization. I am, as long as it's two consensual adults, it seems to me that we make criminals out of people being people.
Right.
So distinguishing between documented workers, sex workers, and illegal should be another part of that. But I also believe that decriminalization, total decriminalization, and updating regulations to include areas I've mentioned, and differentiating between illegal, undocumented, and documented should all be part of the rewritten, updated NRS code that not only deals with brothels and what they called prostitution, but it would be a grander blueprint that's 21st century friendly that would really be the blueprint for other states and revenue and public safety.
Yeah. Tell me more about like what I feel like I'm misunderstanding what you mean when, because at first I was like completely on board with you when you said complete decriminalization. I'm like, hell yeah. But then and I think I'm misunderstanding you. You said something about documented and undocumented. Like, what do you mean by that?
Okay, by documentation, I mean their business, I'm going to say people,
Mm,
because there might actually be men that carry the same documents because they're in
right.
sexual. Okay,
Right.
so I'm saying women, but it's across the board.
True. True. Yep.
So if they're a man, gay, trans, a woman, uh, uh,
Hmm.
there's a way to write that that's 21st century, um, updated, friendly, good business model.
Yeah.
And then there would be something that that a state could just adopt that doesn't look like it was written in 1971.
Yeah. Right.
And I believe that all experiences of what we'll call our sexuality is, and that's, all these different ones that are coming out now. They just get to be expressed safely without making anyone a criminal.
Thank you. It's like this is a freedom espousing country, land of the free. Are we really? If we're not allowing people to the freedom to choose to do this, like the way I've thought about it, if I could put it as simply as this, you can pay somebody for a neck massage or a foot massage, or you can pay somebody for a different massage on a different part of your body, wherever that may be. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like that's the way I look at this. And it's like in this freedom espousing country, we're really gonna tell adults that you can't do that. I can't massage this person's neck for $20. What the fuck?
WTF? Yep.
Yeah.
So it there there it's never even puritanical at this point. I'm going to just say point blank, it's ridiculous.
It is. It is. I mean, it
And
definitely, it
people should
definitely,
be ashamed. They should be ashamed of wanting it to all be control in their way. When we
yeah.
come here to be human, we don't come here to see how hard we can work and how much we can eat or drink. We're here for the touch. We're here for closeness. We're given all these hormones, and we have this natural desire to breed. We have this natural desire to have these releases. And then they're going to tell us we can't. And I'm saying, well, then let's just put parameters that prevent the spread of STIs or STDs.
Mhm.
Okay, that's great. Make it a tax paying, legitimate, um, oldest business in the world. And that to me is progressive and I'm going to say sane.
Yeah. And I want to get back to the idea of the puritanical values that I do believe still exist. But are you good on time? I wanted to just check on. Are
I'm
you good on
good.
time? Cool.
Mhm.
One of the things that I saw I think it was pre-COVID, I saw, to your point, I saw that some counties in Nevada had adjusted their regulations so that male sex workers could, well, so that males could become sex workers. Because before then,
Yeah.
there were only like gynecological exams, for lack of better words. I'm sure I might not be using the right word there. Um, but there were exams for a woman, but there were not regulated approved exams for a man. And
Right.
I've under the impression that some counties have since introduced those regulations, but I'm also under the impression that it's not something that's widely practiced. What are your what are your thoughts on that? I have some thoughts on that maybe we can laugh about, but I'm just curious. What are your thoughts about men in the sex industry?
First of all, it, a brothel, since the beginning of its existence, whether it was way back in the gold rush days or whatever, it was all about the women following the men
True.
and then being there to be in service, right?
Right.
I am very comfortable with that being the case. Okay, that when a gentleman walks, we'll just say a gentleman, a woman, or a couple walk into Bella's Hacienda Ranch, that they're there to choose the woman they're looking for. Okay, and that's just I just never see that being part of evolution.
A man being involved.
No, I do believe that men aren't wired to be with just any woman without taking a pill.
Well,
I
that's
believe that. Just let me finish this one point, okay?
yeah.
And of course, I have tons and tons of customers that I've said this to. Well, why can't I get a job here? And I said, look, so what if a lady comes in and she's about 60 and, but she's older, maybe she's missing a tooth, maybe she's not. And then right behind her, the doorbell rings and it's this cute little 21-year-old blonde. Which one is it going to stand up for?
Right.
And and if you get chosen, it will be probably a piece of cake if it's the 21-year-old. But the body of a woman can respond to any situation. Only she's able to perform what I'd call like the geisha-like duties with a man, a woman, or a couple, because her body doesn't have to have something that stands up. It's a receiver, and of course it's just science, and so that's my scientific logical reason for, if there's going to be male brothels, then make it that way, where it's all men. And then they can create how that's going to work for the 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 client, let's say. What's the client going to do if another man walks in? What's the courtesan? We'll call him I guess, what are we going to call him? The male sex worker. What's he going to do if another man walks in and wants him? Is this for women only? Is it for women, for couples only? There's all of these things that have to be factored in. So, of course, it's possible to have, uh, you know, cl- clients that, well, I should say, I have to back that up. Let's say a gentleman is able to do all three of those, meaning they're okay with that. But maybe there's a sex worker gentleman that's only good with a man, or only good with couples, or only good with a woman. And all of those things enter into our now sexual expressions. I know from a little courtesan that worked for me for quite a while, that in New York, a woman can have an escort that's a man. I don't know how far that goes, but it's the same. You can pay for a female or you can pay for a male. And maybe it's truly just time and companionship.
Yeah. Yeah. And my apologies. I didn't mean to cut you off earlier, but I was going to say that, just speaking from a man's perspective, let's throw men under the bus. I'll do it. Let's do it. Um, and this may be TMI for some of my listeners, but Madam Bella, I figure you can handle this information. Like, for example, if a woman were to, for lack of better words, blow me to completion, right? Give me oral sex. And then that woman were to ask me to have sex with her. It's not that I can't do that, but the chances of me coming again as quickly as I did are lower. And I know that it's not all about me coming, especially if I'm the sex worker. It's about the person coming. But I think there's something to be said about men's performance. And I think that's kind of what you were saying. And look, I don't like throwing my men under the bus here, but look, I think that a woman is able to perform. And I hope this doesn't sound like chauvinistic or sexist or whatever, but I feel like a woman is better able than a man to do that than a man is.
Yep. That's the science behind it. Women And now let's face it, lube has been really
That's
perfected.
the other thing I was going to say is that like you you basically just need lube. You need good lube. I mean,
Yes, change the oil, right? But that's it. And I mean, gentlemen are typically wired that you need a little rest. Just you got to
right.
chill out. And yes, I know you have two, but it takes the other one a minute to get in gear.
Yeah. No, no, that's actually, thank you for saying that. That's actually part of my point that I don't feel I said clear enough. Like, yeah, maybe I could go to Bella's and I could fuck somebody pretty good, but I'm going to need at least 3 hours, maybe four, before I'm ready to go again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to have a little break, you know?
Yeah. More than a
So
woman would, maybe. More than
it's, you are
that's the key
correct.
distinction, right?
Yes, yes,
Where a woman could literally be like, we just need a little bit more lube, but yeah, let's go. You know?
yes. And then remember, in this industry, women really, and once again, this is scientific, we really aren't meant to have many clients in a day. So some days they may have more clients than a normal, let's say, woman could even imagine. But then they may have days when they don't have a client, or they only have one or two clients, and that they still have to take breaks. They still have to do other things besides have sex so that their body holds up for their whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to ask, since you mentioned puritanical views, I just wanted to ask, like, um, kind of back maybe to the Hoff brothels for a bit, but also to you, and
I'm
to your
so glad
point,
we haven't talked about that at all.
right? We haven't touched on it at all.
No.
Um, no, but I'm aware that there have been, and the only reason I'm aware is because I was doing the research and trying to find interviews of other sex workers. And one of the things they've mentioned is that there have been efforts over the years to make sex work in Nevada illegal. And I thought maybe that's where the hesitation is coming from. Maybe they think I'm like part of one of those groups or something. And I just wanted to ask you, do you ever worry about those movements? They seem to be very puritanically based. Is there, you said, well, it's not so much that the puritanical ideals exist anymore, or you said something like that. And I'm like, well, but I've seen them try to take out your business in the past, so they kind of do. So I wanted to see like what your thoughts were on that.
It's typically
Can you give my listeners some background to
okay.
like
Oh, okay,
the like what I'm talking about in case they don't
okay,
know?
of course. What we're talking about is Senate or Assembly bills that wind up at the legislature that would like to have uh, legal prostitution go away. And in order for it to get there, there's usually a religious sector that decides that it's just got to go away. It's evil. And because we've these rural brothels have been um, assets to their communities for over 50 years, the houses that wind up with that type of movement are are the bigger houses, where it turns into like a target. And what I know is that rarely, recently, over, I'm going to say the past decade plus, rarely does that bill ever make it out of a desk drawer. All right, because it's necessary for the rural areas to have these businesses in their locations. They are destinations. They are the taxes that help support the entire community. So I I'm very aware when these movements happen, but I would never say, oh, it'll be okay. I'm cautious because we never ever want to assume anything about who knows who and who might slip something through. And so it's very, very, very important for us to take it seriously, which was, part of the Onesta, supporting those houses in um, Lyon County that were basically under attack. It wasn't any other county but that,
I
but
didn't know that.
it had my attention
Sure.
because it would have affected all of us,
Right.
no matter where the arrow left the bow.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to decide everyone's future. And so you bet when I hear about a bill, I'm on with a the local senator or assemblyman, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? What do you need for me to do? Do you need for me to lobby? Need for me to sign up? Do you need for me to testify? And I have before. It's important to understand that at least in the rural counties of Nevada, we have proven over and over again through these years that clients that are looking for a brothel need for us to be in the locations we are at. And it is a benefit to the well-being of the community, to the and to public safety in general.
And what I'm just curious, testifying and lobbying, what's that been like? Because I talk to people that testify and lobby for cannabis. So I'm interested to hear what it's like to lobby and testify for sex work, the world's oldest profession.
The when I would go into lobby, all right, and I've done it twice now, okay. Once I just did it on behalf of Bella's Hacienda Ranch, all right, and I actually made a difference because Mark Amadei was just a freshman as an assemblyman, and he's still in the Senate. And I'm going to say it right now, Mark. I wish you hadn't been elected. You've been there too long. You should go spend your money and sit on the beach. But back then, and I reminded him when we had the Lincoln Day dinner in Elko, I walked up to him and I said, I'm Bella Cummins. I said, you probably don't remember me, but I'll tell you how we met. And he had a bill that he was wanting to get passed that stopped 18-year-olds from handing out $2 coupons for casinos, which was like a roll of nickels. If you go, I'll give you this coupon. You go into the casino, and it's $2 free. Just present this coupon, and and you got $2 free nickels to play, right? Well, I understood the marketing aspect, but what wasn't understood by this young assemblyman was that these 18-year-olds had a job. They weren't in the casino. They weren't doing anything illegal. They wanted a paycheck. They were handing out a piece of paper. Why would you think there's anything wrong with that? He absolutely never, ever took that bill and went anywhere with it. And he said, my God, Bella, that's 17 years ago. You remember that? I said, I do. And he was fresh and he was young and he was a go-getter and he went to the Senate and now he's a senator and blah, blah, blah. But there are times when politicians or people that have religious ideas about what's right or wrong are incorrect. And it isn't progressive.
And in fact, I spoke to a sex work advocate. It's it's not progressive. It's almost like the opposite of progressive because what you're saying about these women is that they could never have chosen to come here. They're so incompetent that they could have never. You get what I'm saying?
Oh,
It's like
we
an
need to save
underhanded,
them. We need to save them. That's a
right? We
big
need to
one.
save them. Thank you. You get what I'm saying? It's like it's an underhanded. Nobody would have chosen to become or sorry to be present here, and it's like no, all all of the women have. They
Yeah.
did. They contacted me. They applied. I asked them, "Are you sure you want to do this? This is what's involved." And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, come." Like it's not like you kidnapped them in their Dallas backyard and trafficked them to Nevada, right?
Yeah, I totally understand. I ask questions point blank that are going to reveal to me if they're here in service or if they're here only for the money, because that money will be elusive.
Now, I did want to
How,
ask you because this is one of the things that they do ask, and it is something that is from the Brothel Wars book that I referenced that talks about Walter Plankinton. Do you know Walter Plankinton, the first owner of the chicken ranch? Do you know who I'm talking about? No? He was back in the joke in
I,
40 days, but
I'm going to say he was already gone when Russ and the guy who's still there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know he didn't last long. That's for sure. He
yeah,
ended up
right.
going to
So at any
jail.
rate,
But
happens.
to the question I was going to ask is just, one of the main questions that those groups have is or one of the main allegations rather that they make is trafficking. And one of the things out of this book that they covered pretty openly that I thought was interesting. I'm reading an excerpt from the book right now. The pimps lived all over the United States and would call the girls as often as they could to check on how much they were making. Plankington, Walter, who the person I was just referring to, allowed the girls only 2 phone calls a week. Otherwise, he'd find them spending all their time on the telephone fighting with their pimps. They called it sick love. And when they weren't busy whoring, they consumed most of their waking hours and conversation about it. Again, not my words. That's from the book. um, but I wanted to ask you, do you find, and this is one of the main allegations those groups make, do you find that women in the industry do have a pimp on the outside? I've even heard some of the women that have been honest with me about the fact that they do have pimps on the outside. They call them like their husband. It's not really their
The
husband, but
boyfriend
their boyfriend. Yeah. That is that a thing that happens?
used to.
Yeah.
Now I ask, do you have a significant other at home that depends on your income?
Mm,
What are your obligations? Is it children? What, because it's going to affect uh, their in service. Uh, I typically haven't dealt with that situation in several decades, but I know that there are still some that that deal that for whatever reason they have that in their life, and I still tend to believe that they could be from uh, cities that have communities where that's alive and well. And maybe it's a lower income. Maybe it's a lineage of, you know, mom, uh, daughter. sister, 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 sister type of thing. And I, but I'm so careful with that to make sure, because I always feel like there's a street element to it. And that street element isn't empowering. It isn't
Right.
empowering for the young lady or for the business. And so, if that's the case, I'm never going to judge that. I'm just going to say that that is, it's the other women are going to find out, and it's going to be disruptive.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that. I mean, I want to ask you about that, but just really quick, I want to give you an example that I feel like makes it make sense where those people are coming from. So, like, there have been allegations by people that don't believe marijuana should be legal, which I've had them on my show. By the way, I've had them on my show and I've debated them. It's fun to talk to people that I disagree with. And one of the main things they'll try to say is that in these states where cannabis or marijuana has become legal, like Colorado, that the cartel will come in and like buy up all these houses and start growing weed in there because it's legal, and they hide under legality and sell to states around them. And to my point, I always say, well, maybe those other states should become legal so there's less demand. But to that
Yeah.
point, Madam Bella, that is, I actually do see like a point where they're coming from, where it's like, if I were a pimp, which for I don't know, I about said unfortunately I'm not, but I don't mean to say that. Well, you
And
know
I
what I
still
mean by that.
I have to chuckle. You don't
Thank you for
quite,
laughing at that, because
yeah.
I meant that to be funny. Um, if I were a pimp in, like, let's say Chicago, well, okay, I know that I'm running risk in Chicago, but I would think, like, especially like you said, if I was in a big city like Chicago and I'm making a lot of money, I'd start thinking like, how could I maybe start to bring in other forms of revenue? Be like, well, maybe I could fly out some of my trustworthy women to Vegas where it's legal. That way I have a little bit less risk. Like, I'm
I,
legal.
it's not legal, not in Vegas.
Or sorry, I meant to say Nevada. Thank
Yeah,
you
okay.
for correcting
Okay.
me. I'll fly them out to Nevada. Everybody thinks of Vegas and Nevada for some reason. They're synonymous. It's like, it's
Yeah.
kind, what's funny? That's a similarity. I'm from Illinois. Everybody thinks of Illinois as Chicago, but there's so much more to Illinois than Chicago. There's so much more to Nevada than Las Vegas. So it's funny. I just made the same fucking mistake that us Illinoisans were always like, God damn it, there's so much more to Illinois than Chicago. So my apologies on
Oh,
that one. But
by the
what I meant,
way, by the
go
way, I
ahead.
was born in Chicago.
You were?
I I was born in Chicago, Cuneo Hospital, and I grew up in Libertyville, Illinois.
That's so fucking cool.
Yeah, yes, that's why
That's
we have like no accent.
that's
Yeah,
funny. That's funny. I didn't even think about that talking to you. You talk just like me.
yeah, we
So,
do.
but anyway, so you maybe since you're from Illinois, you understand where I was coming from. But again, back to my thing. I see where they're coming from, where like if I was a pimp, I would be like, I'm gonna send some of my girls out to Nevada. And so you're saying you don't see that much anymore because of
No,
maybe your vetting process, or
I believe it's my vetting process, and um, it's expensive. They don't really want to put the money out for the legalities, for the the documents.
well, to
They don't really want to. And does she really have a picture ID? Does she really have a social security card? I mean, there's things that he wants the money. He wants the money every day.
and half of
And
his
now,
money has to go to you, right? If he were to send his
yeah,
girl to you.
it's like, it doesn't have the same ring to it.
Yeah.
And I I'm really I, I'm really against that whole pimp thing. I've walked down the street in Reno on the way to my hairdresser, and I've watched this guy right there in front of the pizza parlor just paste this gal. I knew what was going on. I had to keep walking, or what? No, you don't interfere.
Mm.
And it's like it's there. It's out there. It's
I was good.
that's why legality, that's why legalization is such a good thing.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you what you meant by that because frankly, I know we call you a madam, but you're kind of a pimp. You know what I mean? Like not in the terms that you just spoke about, but like madam pimp, would you agree they're kind of synonymous?
In my case, I can see how someone would like to draw a parallel. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a woman, and I I still believe that a man making his income off of someone else and is manipulating her to do it, or threatening her to do it, or any of those awful things. That's the real definition of pimp. And so I don't fit into that category ever. I my I never threaten anyone. It's all above board, meaning they make the choice to come to me. They're never indebted to me. That's one of the reasons I don't have a contract that they sign. Why would I need that? If they want me to be honest and help them and be exactly the mentor they're looking for right now, then if for some reason they need to go, there is nothing that comes out of their salary. Or I'm sorry, their half. I shouldn't say salary. Their half. This is so open-ended. There is no way Madam Bella could wear the P word.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that if I was Colette, if I was a girl, instead of being Cole, if I was
Yeah.
Colette. By the way, my aunt is named Colette, so
Oh,
that's
there you
kind of
go.
funny. That's who I'm named after. For folks that didn't know, my aunt Colette. And so if I was Colette and I went out for 2 weeks and I did not do well, I wanted to ask you that. Would you be like, hey Colette, sorry, because I'm Colette now.
Yeah.
Hey Colette, I know I didn't work well, but you were here for 3 weeks and you owe me, you know, the rent. Like, how does that work? If I don't know if that ever happens, but like, I'm just curious. Like, if I didn't do well, do I owe you? Yeah, and I would understand why I would. Again, using the hair cutting example, my significant other would owe rent even if they cut hair or not. I mean, it's a fucking business.
Well,
So,
she has a station. She has a
right.
room. She's said that this is where
Correct.
she's hanging her business license and her um,
Right.
cosmetology license. So here, here's what I would do, Colette. I know you'd like to stay for 3 weeks. Okay. I have trainers. All right. Can you listen to the trainers? Can you let them help you negotiate? Can you let them and not say anything, just learn what you don't know so that you can be successful. All right. And so you're doing that. Okay. So I'm going to say if you've been chosen by a client, that trainer is going to get you a booking with that client. It's going to happen. All right. So you aren't just on your own. How are you going to become a Bella's beauty if you just come in here and you go, well, I know how to do sex? Because you don't. You don't know how to seduce. You don't know how Colette is a personality. He's going to go spend all this money, but Colette is going to be this in-service courtesan. So by the end of the first week, chances are you aren't going to owe any money. By the end of the second week, if your whole life falls apart in Cole's world, during the week, because I look at the sheets, what like we call booking sheets, and I might call you in and say, Colette, what's going on? Or do I need to talk to Cole? Who's Because I already know Colette has no future and no past. Colette is like, I really like this. I can be wild and crazy. I can do everything Cole always wanted to do. And so it's like finding Colette. Who's Colette? And then if by the end of the second week, let's say, didn't go well, I would say, you know, if it's best that you go home, I understand. I'm never going to hold you accountable for this. I understand what your goal was. However, you might need to go look at why you're doing this. What's your driving motivation to be in service to humanity? Now, I rarely have that kind of a conversation, Colette, but every single lady there takes on Sunday, it can take me hours and hours and hours to get through what I call payroll because they all want to share what they've learned or what they've read in that big pile of books by the CB radio and how they're evolving. And I never cut them short. But Colette, you can do this. You just have to put Cole in the wardrobe with a little duct tape on his mouth and decide who Colette is.
Yeah. And, you know, I wanted to ask, I've heard other houses offer the ability, let's just say the worst case scenario, Colette did not do well, and I'm just a fucking mess.
She's
Right.
probably going to have to get her debit card out.
Right. Well, and that's what
I
I was
I
gonna
would
ask.
probably I would probably say, here's what I would probably say. Look, it's your first time here. I've got it.
Sure.
And
But I
I
was,
have done that many times.
yeah. And I'm sure that that has happened, you know, like, hey, you tried.
No, we
This
don't
wasn't for you.
try.
Let's
No, we
laugh.
can't try.
What
Am I
was
talking to Cole or Colette? Oh,
right.
Colette. Colette, and a lot of times, um, in the, in the past for me, my interviewing had to evolve so that I brought in the evolved Colette, the one that really wanted to do this, even if it was a bucket list thing. I
Yeah.
once had a little Mormon gal come in, and she'd been really heavy, and now she'd had like surgery, and she was much littler, and she just wanted to know what it was like to be in the house, to be a courtesan, and she went through all the paperwork, and one of the gals actually invited her in to do a double party with her. And it was really the only party she had until the day her husband, another Mormon, that's good. I have nothing bad to say about Mormons, but they just happen to be.
Yeah. I
Her
we
second
yeah.
party was when her husband came to the door, picked her out of lineup, and she charged him to go to bed. And that was the end of her 2 week stay. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
She lived out of fantasy.
Yeah. And so other houses offer the ability. It sounds like you don't have maid services or bartending, but kind of the reason I was asking that, it's cool that it sounds like you offer women, especially like first timers that maybe didn't know what they were getting into. It also sounds like maybe you vet them enough so that that type of situation doesn't happen anymore. But again, it sounds like this does happen at some other houses and they offer the ability to perform like duties to offset their debt, for example, housekeeping or whatever. Is that anything that ever comes into the equation, or are you just basically like, nah, we're good, get out of here?
No, I don't say get out of here. I say please
Well,
stay
I
in
don't mean to
touch.
get, yeah, keep in touch.
Yeah, please stay in touch. But, it isn't. I because I've never run in a different house from Bella's. I would think that the lady somehow reimburses the house for what she owes. I haven't heard about, you know, doing some housekeeping or doing things like that. And, it being courtesan run, the two ladies that we call staff are ladies that worked for me, made hundreds of thousands of dollars working for me then. Now it's with me. But they're at a time in their life where they want to teach what they know. And they also they're good with answering the door. And they're good with being on team with the courtesans. So this whole courtesan run thing is there's just no one from the outside that's never been involved in sensual sexual services. And that's just never happened before. There's always been people that are outsiders, whether they're cleaners or chefs or CFOs or, uh, you know, I will say cleaners, but, you know, this particular taking care of Bella's Hacienda Ranch and keeping it absolutely, I'm going to say probably the cleanest house in Nevada. It is done because everyone has pride in how it looks. I understand at some houses, in order to use one of the VIP rooms, there's like a $25 charge because then they're going to send the maid in and they got to pay her clean up that room. Well, it doesn't work that way at Bella's. The lady cleans up the room. One of the other courtesans that we'll call hostess bartender will go in and sanitize. But why should there be a charge? The courtesan, cleaned up the towels, wiped up the floor, remade the bed. She was part of setting it up for her next, for her team player, the lady that's going to use that room right behind her. So things get sprayed down. That's easy. But they don't need to pay. They need to understand the running of a business because it is their business too.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, um, we kind of already talked about decriminalization versus legalization, which is one of the things that I wanted to end our conversation on. It sounds like you're supportive of the full decriminalization of sex work, which I actually do think, like when we're talking about copying and pasting, I think one of the shortcomings, it's what you started with. And that's what I really liked about how you started with talking about Nevada and Reno is being one of the big issues with the legalization of sex work in Nevada. You can't legalize something, but then carve out a place where it remains highly illegal. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? So, full
It's absolutely correct.
decriminalization. Yeah, full decriminalization is the copy and paste.
The only way to prevent illegal activity or drastically reduce it in Vegas or Reno is to have a district. And when you have a district, then there's how should I say? Then it tends to keep the illegals out or a larger percentage of them out. And it's time for that. And then it's a serious thing. What is really going on in the casinos and
Right.
why? Why did why did is it Steve Wynn that's got Wynn? Why was he such a big advocate for closing us down? Well,
You
there's
need
pretty
to
good
tell me
reason
more
why.
on that. Please tell me more on that because I do not know about any of this. Please tell me a little bit
It's
more.
year it's years ago.
Okay.
but he was anti-brothel all the way.
And how do
And
people like look this up if they want to like read about it
I
online?
don't know,
Will the,
but
like do they look up Steve Wynn anti-brothel or like
I'm just going to say, take a look. But
mhm.
he was, and he would have been happy if all of us in rural Nevada had gone away. He finally, apparently, he just stopped talking about it because it wasn't popular. These communities require us to help them sustain themselves financially. I mean, it's a big deal. I know I mentioned it. Wells now has 5 truck stops.
Right.
Go to a truck stop in any other state that has no legal house in that community. It's it's what they call lot lizards,
Yeah.
and it's pimps and women. And they knock on your truck, they terrorize these guys or women, whatever it is. And, I'm serious. Wells would be in trouble if I wasn't there. They'd move in. And now, it's like it would be almost impossible for Elko County Sheriff's Department to do anything but chase them around in a parking lot.
Yeah.
So there, this this particular industry has a lot of things. I'm going to say attributes that has way more positive outcomes, an incredible number of outcomes, but we don't say anything. We just are.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I really had to keep my head down below the sagebrush to keep from getting it shot off. But it's like now I'm standing up and saying, I'm the spokeswoman. This is where this gets to go. But and I owned Bella's longer than Dennis owned his first house. And so I know the direction. I can feel it and I get to share it. I the facts help people understand through people like you how this works. Because I remember going through an earthquake. I thought it's a train. We aren't near a track. It's like my head went through all these things, scenarios of what it could be. And then finally, my incredible husband came downstairs and he says, Did you feel that earthquake? But then I knew what it felt like. We talk about the brothel industry. It's like me experiencing the earthquake until a person's actually been involved or studied about it or gone into one, taken a tour, asked their questions. They don't really know. It's a little like a foreign language to them. Well, do you mean this? Do you mean this? And so, as we're probably in episode 3 right now, but as long as with all this great time that we've been talking, but the more I get the chance to explain why it's necessary, why it's good for a community, why it's never harmful for anyone that never needs to have a service like that. It never harms anyone. And that's the rule. If it harms someone, you should never do it. But if it doesn't, then you're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to close out this conversation with a topic. I think this is a good way to end this conversation, maybe. Um, some of the negatives, and I want to end off with some of the positives. So I know negatives are hard to talk about because, frankly, we're both supporters of the industry, So it's like For me, I struggle to come up with a lot of negatives. I can come up easily with a lot of positives as we've talked about, like the world would truly be a better place, I think. But I think one of the most salient and accurate, I wouldn't even call it a negative thing. I just think it's something to be open and honest about, is the effect it can have on women who I don't even really know. Honestly, I'm not going to sit here and try to guess. What I want to ask you is if you've ever heard of this. Have you heard of women losing the ability to become pregnant because of this line of work? Or is
No,
that dramatic? I'm honestly asking you because somebody has told me that.
I personally have never had any of the women that have worked with me for 37 years not be able to reproduce because they were in the industry.
Yeah.
Um, if there is a negative, I've I've worn the same negative, being involved in something that is so harshly judged. And so if I were a courtesan right now, it would probably be best to keep it private and where you don't go out and tell a lot of people because they won't understand the calling. And a person has to follow their calling. It's like a dharma, okay? Judgment, stigma, stereotyping. I've worn that for 37 years. It's getting better. There's less, and I'm thankful for that. But for the ladies that are young and they are in the industry, I don't think that's over. I think mine has lightened because I'm wise. I'm really at this place where, like my my PR gentleman says, Bella, I'm glad you're the age you are. It really helps people hear you. And so I can hear what he's saying as well. But in the negativity part, sex is greatly misunderstood. What happens behind that closed door is really misunderstood. And these women get to be careful about who they tell. If the rest of their dreams and goals revolve around entering another industry that might really block their forward movement as far as what's next.
Yeah.
So that to me, that's still real. And that's why I'm talking. I don't think people need to shout to the world what they do because we aren't really what we do. We are what we are because we came here just to be what we are. So when that day comes and she is no longer a courtesan, that shouldn't hang on her as a label. She was in a service industry that mattered to her at this time in her life for her involvement.
Yeah. Have you, and again, in the terms of negative, have you heard of, are you aware of the term blanket party?
Ah, isn't that where they roll somebody up in a blanket and do bad things to them? Or has it got a different uh, meaning now?
I heard that it was like the idea that, yeah, if a woman was working or doing better or something, it sounds kind of maybe like a residual of that Hoff culture, for lack of better words.
Mhm.
That, yeah, you'd throw a blanket on her and beat her with a lock and a sock.
Ah, you know, I've never heard of that being done.
There, and I bring up what I'm actually talking about. I'm kind of blanketing a lot of different behaviors. Again, maybe attributed to the Hoff estate. People have I've described slipping Nair into people's like shampoo or bleach to sabotage them so that they don't look like
Mm.
presentable to customers. Have you heard of anything like that with regard to negativity?
No, however, I will tell you, if those things are going on in a house, that is a really good reason for them to never let coal through the door.
The patron Cole,
Yeah,
you mean?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
because, or no, the journalist, the interviewer, the
Oh, yeah,
podcast
yeah.
man,
Yeah, yeah.
because somebody's gonna slip.
Sure.
And they and and in part of the response to the question we touched on in our earlier conversation was about why wouldn't they let you in?
Yeah.
Because they like to take certain women, program what they're going to say, and nothing more. And if and so they're hand-picked women. All of those houses, they're hand-picked, and it, it, and so they're in a place that works for them. Both sides. All right, they're like the poster women, and anything else that's going on in there that those other women might not say what they're meant to say. And if they slip or they get caught in a situation being asked a question that's controversial,
Hmm.
if they're honest, they're going to hesitate or they're going to slip. And and we all know that it's just always better to tell the truth because if you lie, it just gets so deep that eventually it becomes this horrible fiasco, right? So that's why at this point in time, let's say in Lyon County, that there is no leader that just puts a woman on each side and here's your spokespeople. So they have no one they want to put in that situation. And so some of them have gravitated towards me because when they ask if they can do a podcast, I say, yes, it's okay to talk.
Yeah.
And they're blown away by that. Really, Bella? Well, that other house said, no, I couldn't do anything. I like that. And I said, please feel free. How else are they going to follow their path? How else are they going to learn? Where are
See,
they going
and
to get their voice?
I have so much respect for that approach, and I have so much disdain for the other approach. Like it makes me upset. It makes like if you can't tell, it makes me angry as an advocate for sex work.
Mhm.
Like, God damn it, why aren't you letting these women talk? You know, like these are the women that need to talk. Not
Yeah,
you, the other, you
I
know.
understand.
Yeah.
So it's,
It feels like we're shooting our own foot, cutting off our nose to spite our face. Like
well,
we're
you know,
stronger together.
Yes, we are. And, if they're happy with, let's say, the money that's coming in and they see no reason to evolve or uh, to pick up the baton that was handed to them. I think they just laid it on the coffee table, but it's going to it won't work forever. It's going to decel. Things have to keep moving forward, and so here is a solution. It doesn't mean that any of those other houses that have madams or managers or whatever they label them, they don't really have to speak up, but they could darn sure evolve from within
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
become better, um, uh, better businesses for these courtesans to hang their business license in. And at some point in time, maybe they would want to speak up, but those are the things that are they're going to happen anyway. Because I'm talking, you're going to put this out. There's going to be other podcasters. My message will be the same, and it's going to go out there. I believe other owners are going to hear what I have to say. Well, what the heck does Bella mean by empowerment? Well, we're doing as much as we can, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but eventually, I just think they're going to start to get it. Maybe I'll be alive, but I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm going to speak up about it. And there's times that I wish I had more rooms because these ladies, they all say the same thing. I want to work for you. And I say, you're working with me. And I'm working with you.
Yeah.
But it's going, they're just going to have to come in when there's room
Yeah.
and leave with the knowledge. And maybe they'll, some of them will take it to other houses. I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully. Hopefully.
It's a gut. I'll
Well, hey,
plant little, I'll plant little cortisone seeds.
to wrap up, I want to give you the room on the positive still, but I also just wanted to I wondered how has business been. I mean, I'm sure it was awful during the pandemic, but post pandemic, and I the reason I'm asking this is because you mentioned the CB radio. I've heard from many workers that most of the business is truckers, um, which is fine. I mean, those are the people that come through Nevada. But I'm just asking, is that accurate, or do you see like people like me coming through just as a tourist? Like, hey, what's what's business been like? And I bring that up in the negatives only because I've heard that it's not been good lately. But I wanted to ask you.
Okay. Bella's is doing great.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Good to hear.
There was a time when it was about 50-50 between car traffic and I'm going back over the years, okay?
Sure.
That business was 50% car traffic, pickups, 50% long haulers, okay? Now it's because of, you know, Wendover, Park City, Salt Lake City, and then that's going, of course, east. And then when you get up into Idaho, you've got Twin Falls, you have Boise, you have Sun Valley. We are, we're just way more car traffic. And I will say that the gentlemen, women, couples coming through the door, they have a really decent amount of money and they're spending it on themselves, getting the getting the experience they want to have. So, of course, it helps business for me to be able to talk on great podcasts like yourself. Okay. It really does because there's more people then that go, oh man, we better go check the website out. Oh, wow, we better go stop it. Hey, we're going through the crossroads.
Right.
And it's like, that's all good. We have no problem giving complimentary tours. I always say to the whoever it is, I say, if you have it, would you tip her?
Yeah.
And but the more people come through, whether they are wanting an experience or not, as long as they take the tour, they're going to know more about what's down the halls. Why would a person go down the hall? What does it cost? How does this work? It's like it's a mini education on on being human correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's funny is when I went on to, so I did go to the bunny ranch despite not being welcomed. And I asked for a tour from the first woman who was not very kind. She said, yes, I can give you a tour, which, by the way, when I was driving up, yeah, it said free tours, free drinks, no sex required. There was like multiple signs that said that. And I was under the impression that that was the case because, again, I was familiar with the establishment. And she said, when I asked, can I get a tour? She said, yeah, I can give you a tour to my room. And I said, but like, okay, I want to see I came here. I've been driving 24 fucking hours. I want to see the bunny ranch. You know what I mean? And she ended up just taking me to her room. We did the negotiation. I ended up talking to another girl who took me on the tour. And look, I wasn't there for sex. I was there for the experience. But to your point, I bought her a drink.
Great.
I bought her a drink, gave her a tip, like, because thank you for giving me the tip. Like, I'm not trying to waste your time. I know you don't make money off of giving me a tour. So, yeah, I'm going to give you a tip. I'm going to buy you a drink, make sure that you feel it was worth your while. So,
Yeah, and that's I'm going to say that that's a random act of kindness in a way. You you knew in your heart that you had two experiences. One you'd never want to have again, and the other was like, God, I wish I'd seen you first.
right.
But you still remember the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was rough.
That's the tarnish that will be in your mind forever as your first experience this time. You won't be
Yeah.
able to wipe it away.
Oh, no. No, you should have been seeing you should have heard what happened in negotiations. She was so rude to me. So, first of all, gosh, I just want to tell you this story really quickly, just because I think you'd like it. My listeners at this point have already heard this story. But I went in and I was actually forced to pick a girl. I watched Cat House back in the day. I didn't watch it back in the day. I actually bought the DVD recently and watched it. And I was under the impression that if you were nervous that you could buy liquid courage before you picked a girl. Well, they made me pick a girl. So I picked the girl. I picked the girl that looked like she was my age just because that felt most comfortable. We went to the bar and the bartender was like, "What would you like?" I was like, "I'll have a beer." He got me a beer. He's like, "It's $6." I was like, "Great." So I gave him $6 and I'm like talking to the girl, kind of asking her questions, how long you been here, stuff like that. And I hear him out of the like side of my ear. He's like, "Hey boss, I told you $12." I said, "Wait a minute. I thought you said 6 for the beer." And he said, "Yeah, 6 for the beer, 12 for the round." And I was like, "Oh, my apologies. I didn't realize I was buying her a drink. But I will buy her one. I have no problem." So I bought 2 women a drink that night, actually, when I think about it. But so I went into the negotiation with her because, as I told you, I asked, "Can I get a tour?" She said, "Yeah, you can get a tour to my room." She took me to her room. We had negotiations. I just wanted to hear, I wanted to see a menu because that's the other thing. The signs said you can see a menu. She was like, "No, I don't have a menu. What do you want?" I asked what I wanted, just hypothetically what I enjoy. And the price was insane, insane. And just because people are wondering right now, I asked for oral sex. She said the price was $1,500, which, you know, like, I don't know. That's whatever. I'm not asking you to comment right now, Bella. But I ended up saying, that's a little bit out of my price range. She offered me a few more options. I wasn't interested in purchasing sex that night, so I said no. And but just to kind of lighten up the mood as we departed, I said, "Hey, wasn't that funny how I kind of misunderstood that the bartender wanted you to buy me that drink? I was trying to like just be nice." And she said, "Yeah, well, you should have bought me a drink." And I was like, "That's not what I was saying. I wasn't saying that I shouldn't have bought you a drink. It's like, sorry. I was trying to say sorry that I'm not purchasing your services tonight. And isn't that funny how I didn't understand how I was buying you a drink?" And she just like made it really personal. And the other girl was really nice to me. So, and gave me a tour. And that's why I gave her a tip and a drink, gave her some cash. Sorry, I just had to share my story because it was not a good experience.
That is what that's leaves a bad taste in a client's mouth. And it's sad to say that because it happened at a fairly famous house, a
Right.
person would assume, if they were an assumer, that all houses are that way.
Right. Yeah.
And that is totally unfair. And when clients, come into Bella's, I say, look, there's only one Bella's. And if this was like a fabulous experience and I can see the smile on your face, please remember this experience happened here. I can never guarantee what might happen at another brothel.
Hmm.
And it's because of stories like that,
And is
where
that maybe a good?
it's a part of the negativity.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is that maybe a good way to wrap up the negativity? Is that
Mhm.
you said it in our first part of our conversation? You said that one of the things you didn't like about Dennis Hoff was that he cast this wide net and made him bigger than himself. And I'm wondering if part of what you meant by that is because exactly what you just said. Like, I assumed that this is the showcase brothel. This is the Bunny Ranch. It was on HBO. That means that the experience I had there, that's supposed to be the best. I thought. And so
Well,
you're right. I would assume that it's only going to get worse as I go to other houses. And what you're saying is that's not true. So I wanted to wrap that back around to put a cap on the negativity. Do you think that that is what you meant by he made himself larger than what he is, that he almost defined what isn't definable?
that's well said. He it can lead a client or someone that's looking at the industry from the outside that knows nothing to believe that it's that way at all houses, or maybe worse.
Hmm.
But typically, people don't go to the positive. Well,
Right.
maybe it would be better. Well, if something is less than good or satisfying, typically people stop short at giving it another go. If the experience was even moderate, they'll give it a go. But if it's downright rude, they're going to think twice before they put themselves in that situation again. And I know that because I certainly would.
Yeah. And as we close with Lene, I wanted to just say I'm sorry for we did spend a lot of airtime on negativity, but this is a pro sex work conversation, so I feel it's only right that we embrace maybe what's not perfect, you know? So I thank you for being open to talk about what isn't the best and what you are aware of. Oh, did I lose you?
No, I'm right here.
Oh, okay. Your video froze for a
I'm right
second.
here.
So,
Oh, uh-oh. So, but I am, I am pro, I'm going to still call it sex worker because it's a lot of it can eventually tie into the actual, you know, sex part of being human. But the positive is a healing. And we get hurt many times by our own making, but it's the healing that that helps us transcend and forgive and learn to be better people. And to I'm just going to say, Bellas, to come in there and be accepted just the way you are, and and being met with someone that says, "Welcome to Bella's. Have you been here before? And oh, you'd like a tour? Absolutely. Now we'd like for you to pick a lady that to be your tour guide. They all give great tours. But then when we explain uh, or share with the group of ladies there, look, this appears to just be a tour, but then don't assume that either, but give the best tour you've ever given today. And it's always positive. I get the emails where the gentleman says, "Oh, wow, I really would like to come back. I'll bring more money." Perfect. That means everything went really well, and I don't know if uh, all of your viewers know, but we do get a lot of what I call laborers that come through the door because Idaho is a big farming, dairy farming, all of that. They are just as important. And when they walk through the door as a man that walks through with a black AMX, and he gets to be. He everybody works or should work diligently to give whoever they work for an honest day's work for their money. And so when a client comes in for the experience, and for many of those men, they don't have a family here, then it best be pleasant and accepting of a situation that maybe they never meant to find themselves in. So this industry is it's magical. It's multifaceted. It's it's been my platform for growth, becoming exactly who I am today, sitting in front of you.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could spend a lot of time on the positives, but I wanted to give you this space because I know we have been taking a lot, I've taken a lot of your time. I wanted to give you the space to talk about what you feel the positives are, if there are any more that you'd like to talk about as we wrap up our conversation today. I mean, I truly think it's something you've said throughout that it will make civilization, society better. Um, but I don't know. Just any other thoughts on the positives? Like, because again, I feel bad for calling you and spending so much of your time talking about the negatives. But again, us being both pro sex, I feel it's important for us to embrace that because what we're going to work to do is improve, make it more positive, right? So that there's less negatives to talk about. But again, what are some more positives?
Well, in just wrapping up what you're talking about is negative.
Sure.
In map making, a person has to understand where they're at before they can embark on meant to what it's meant to evolve into.
Hmm.
So the positive is, as we're sitting here talking, if one brothel is evolving, then there's a chance. There's an opportunity for it, even if it never caught on in Nevada, but it went across the country anyway. And I was a consultant for states that had watched your podcast and said, "Bella, we understand what you're saying. Can you help us create this?" Then I will have been successful. So the positives are right now, a person can experience their sexuality safely without any concerns about STIs, STDs. That's a positive. They can have the experience without any obligation of having to call someone in the morning. And they can feel good or great about the fact that they engaged in their sexuality safely, which means they would only feel good about it. And I feel like we don't always feel good about some of the choices we make. But I have yet to see someone that had an experience at Bella's say, "Oh boy, I really wish I hadn't done that." It's like, it's not going to happen. So we we should be thankful that, and I'm thankful that I've been involved in something that I really see only positive things about for everyone involved, that makes that choice to be a courtesan or a client.
Yeah. Well, hey, you're going to go down in history as one of the early figures that participated in what we call the legal trade of sex work. So I wanted to give you the space in light of that. Do you have anything else you'd like to mention for our audience before we go? I don't think this will be the last time we talk. I'd love to come to Nevada and visit you, but just, to give
When?
you the
When?
space.
Well, when it's meant to be. I'm thinking you have enough footage right now that if you chose, you could run about 3 episodes,
Yeah.
or they're
Well,
going
we
to be
don't
sitting there for a really long time.
know that my audience likes the long form conversation. So I want to say again, thank you on behalf of them. This is one episode. So
Oh,
they're in it for the long haul. Yeah.
oh, there you go. Get your popcorn and your soft drink or
That's
beer.
right. Yeah.
Maybe and just remember out there, life is too short for bad booze. So
Or
drink
bad weed.
good, yeah, or bad weed. Drink exactly. And if anyone's in the area, feel free to stop at Bella's. Oh, and there's Bella's restaurants. You can have great food and you can have the other too. My little motto was life is too short for bad food or bad sex.
Those are some
And
wise
then,
words.
yeah, and then remember it's Bella's.us if they want a
Bellas.us.
sneak peek at those courtesans.
Yep.
Bella's.us. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Folks, if it's easier for you, we have that in the podcast description. So you can just click on it and go right there. So Bella, thank you for your time. I am so excited for my audience to hear our conversation. I look forward to the next time we chat. I don't think this is going to be the last time we chat. So
Well, let's just say we know.
yes.
Okay. Okay. And I'm going to say thank you again. Thank you to all of your audience and bye for now.
Yeah. Bye for now. And since we started as kind of a drug podcast, can I ask you, is it preferred that you have a drink, or like, let's say if we hung out, would you have a joint with me, or is that too much? Would we just have a drink together?
Uh, I would say that it would be best if we just had a great glass of wine.
Perfect.
However, I am never against the cannabis thing.
Good.
And I know it's another conversation, but there was a period of time when I did use Rick Simpson oil, the highest strength they had, to absolutely cure my cervical cancer and the tumor in my uterus. And it did it in 2 weeks for the cervical cancer, 2 months for the tumor.
Well, that'll be the first thing we talk about next time we talk. So,
So I'm just saying, I, there just came a day when I the cannabis said not now,
yeah,
but by golly, I thank it every day.
that's beautiful. Well, Bella,
Okay.
thank you. And folks,
God bless you.
I hope you found as much value in this conversation as I did. We'll see you in the
Oh,
next episode.
I loved it. Thank you. Bye
Yeah,
for now.
take care.